only reason she's not more prolific is the stuff that isn't easy or well documented. Yeah, that's something I think about a lot with this game, actually, is like, I mean, again, coming from Smash, where the community is enormous and kind of just, you know, there's just so many people playing it that, not that the tier list can't get shaken up by any means, but there's just so much stuff that's documented so well. And meanwhile, you look at this roster, and there's probably characters that, like, players of a certain skill level have, like, barely even explored because it's just not the characters that they want to focus on. And that's just kind of interesting. That, you know, if this game suddenly became one of the most popular games in the world, who knows what people might end up figuring out against, or, you know, with characters that not a lot of people like to play. It's also just funny to think about things in terms of, like, you know, there's only so many Hibiki players in the world. Does that make me one of the best Hibiki players by default? I don't even know. I actually don't know how many Hibiki players there are, but you kind of know what I mean. Never played Dawn of Mana. That OST has... Yeah, no, I was actually thinking about this game recently. I think mostly just because there's a new Mana game coming out. I don't know. I was just thinking back on the Mana series in general, because it's kind of a weird franchise, where a lot of the games in the franchise are not very good. But they tend to have absolutely phenomenal music and character designs in a way that just... I mean, probably because I grew up with the first game, just absolutely fascinates me, like, throughout the entire franchise, even the games that aren't that great. And Dawn of Mana is especially not that great, and I would not recommend it, but it does have a really good soundtrack. Honestly, that game felt like kind of a fever dream when I first found it, because I found it through the soundtrack and just, like, looking more into the franchise. And most of what's so strange about it is that it is... it's a game that very much has, like, Kingdom Hearts level of production quality for a game that, like, nobody cared about. So, like, seeing the high-quality cutscenes that the game has is... It's almost, like, sad in a weird way, where I'm just like, oh, this is a lot of hard work for a game that almost nobody cares about. Oh, shit. For context, the person I'm playing with right now, person in chat, Discord, we've played Street Fighter, I think, at least once or twice in the past. And they are very good at Street Fighter, a lot better than I am. But just kind of a fighting game person in general. I keep kind of like tuning in and out of Street Fighter. I'll play for a little bit, because like, I always assume that my muscle memory is going to be totally shot or something, and I'm scared to go back to it. And then I play it for 2 seconds, and I'm like, wait, no, this game's fun, I still know everything. But I haven't been on like the hard grind with it for a while. I feel that I bounce between games too much. Yeah, I've tried to be like very... dedicated to BlazBlue lately, and at least part of that is because I have the upcoming tournament, which is next Saturday. But I mean, also in general, like, switching between games is hard. I like the idea of being able to go to like a handful of different brackets, like when I go to tournaments. But holy fuck, I am so bad at switching between games. Like, on the fly like that, anyway. Where, like, maybe I could do, like, BlazBlue and Street Fighter, but, like, BlazBlue and another anime fighter, especially Guilty Gear, anytime I've tried that, it's gone so bad for my muscle memory. I end up having to, like, readjust to, like, everything between games in a way that I'm just not good at. It feels especially bad with Guilty Gear, though, because Guilty Gear is, like, the same game, but different. Not that it's, like, literally the same game by any means. Obviously, they, like, have a lot of differences to how they flow. But, you know, they both have very similar air dashes. You know, defensive mechanics kind of built in a similar way. Meter, supers kind of built in a similar... I don't know. A lot about those games are just built in a really similar way that, like... The only time I went to a bracket for both, I think I went 0-2 in both games, because I just couldn't readjust. It's honestly just such a cool idea for a game. Yeah, in general, the whole idea behind the, like, I guess all of these games is getting inside people's heads and, like, whether it's helping them out with issues or something like this where it's more about, like, them working with you for whatever reason. Like, for this, it's literally school, and this is supposed to be, like, training. But they just go to some, like, really smart and interesting places with it. Especially in the second game. But I don't know, it just does a lot of cool stuff, both from, like, a storytelling perspective, because obviously there's a lot of literally like environmental storytelling, even with just stuff like these the collectibles that you pick up all being drawings of things that kind of like a bigger picture of like little things that might be in the person's head. I honestly feel like literally every game that I've seen that does that though has really creative levels to it. Not that that list is huge. Off the top of my head, there's Psychonauts 1 and 2. It is kind of a whole thing in like both of the Nights into Dreams games, although they don't the storytelling in those games aren't great, so that's not emphasized quite as well as it could be. And then I guess you could pretty much argue that that's literally all that Humanity is about. At best, they can do really cool stuff with storytelling, and at worst, it's just a good excuse to make like really surreal areas to explore that like would be hard to justify in your average game. Even if it's a surreal game, sometimes it's like, why would we be in a location like this? Outside of chalking it up to just, it's a game. And sometimes calling it a dream world is a little bit more immersive. I get you, Psychonauts 1 is definitely doable in 2 streams, especially knowing what you're doing. Yeah, I think it'll go okay. And it's somewhere in between for a game for me, where on one hand it is not a new game that I'm playing through, but it's also not a game I'm like intimately familiar with, like I am with some of the more exploratory games I played. And I am not always the best at not getting lost in more exploratory games that I'm not super familiar with, so that is basically the only thing I'm worried about at all. I was thinking about that somewhat recently, though, where, like, obviously everybody's super different when it comes to streaming in general and kind of, like, where their strengths are and everything with, like, the kinds of games that they play and stuff. And I've definitely gotten a lot of compliments for being able to do something like fighting games on a stream where, like, you know, whether or not I'm playing them at my best, a lot of people, like, wouldn't trust themselves playing the genre at all, because it's just such, like, a involved thing to play in a way that, like, a lot of people have trouble multitasking with. But for me, that tends to be more exploration-based games, where I feel like whenever I jump into something where I, like, literally don't know where I need to go, my brain, like, resets every 2 seconds unless I'm, like, really hyper-focusing. And I think, in my opinion anyway, well, like, the conversations and stuff on the stream went just fine. As far as, like, the raw gameplay experience, one of the worst streams I've ever had was when I played, Ghost of a Tale, which is a game that I really like a lot and that I recommend playing, where it's very much kind of like a very cute collect-a-thon kind of game, where you play as a mouse. And I was not very, like, you know, I was familiar enough with the game because I had beaten it once, but, like, I didn't know where, like, everything was, and if it expected me to go somewhere specific, it wasn't, like, very clear when it came to, like, making sure it directed you the right way. And I'm pretty sure there was at least an hour and a half to 2 hours of that stream where I just actually walked around in circles, and I was like, okay, maybe this is something I can't trust myself to be very good at focusing at while I'm live. And maybe I just need to acknowledge that about myself. This boss reminds me of when I first played the game on GameTap. I definitely remember when I first played the game, it was on console, but I do have a lot of flashbacks of this game from, I remember it being a very early PC gaming, like, I need a better PC to play this game memory, where a friend of mine had a laptop that could run the game just great. Meanwhile, this was, like, late 2000s or something. Oh, the cutscene go. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I remember a friend of mine had a laptop that could run the game, and it was definitely my first moment of, like, I guess PC performance jealousy, because I was like, holy shit, your computer can run Psychonauts? Meanwhile, my home computer, like my family computer at the time, could barely even run, like, an N64 emulator. But yeah, no, I guess that was pretty much most of the story. I just, like, it inspired me in thinking about how cool it was that games could even, like, run on a computer in the first place. And I was like, holy shit, I want to keep doing more and more cool things on my computer. And thankfully that never stopped being a thing. I just bought PC parts for a new PC like a week ago, worked all summer for the PC. Nice! I like... I don't know if looked out is the right way to put it, with my, like when I initially built this PC, where basically what happened at the time was that, like, it was, like, fairly expensive. I want to say it was in, like, the $1,200 range, like, thankfully, before PC parts got insanely expensive, like, when, like, the lockdowns and stuff first started. I had a car at the time that I had just paid off a 5-year loan on, and I was like, oh, holy shit, I finally paid off a car loan. This is the first time I've ever owned a car. And then I think literally within a week of my... It was within a week or within a month of my last payment, it ended up breaking. The shocks in the car went, and then, like, the little bit of driving between when the shocks went and when I could finally get it to a shop, they were like, yeah, this is thousands of dollars of repairs, and it's just not even worth repairing. I was like, well, shit. Okay, never mind. However, a friend of mine is like a car person. Like, he likes having car projects to work on just for fun, because he likes working on cars. And he offered to buy my old car off me for, like, a couple or like, I think like $1,000 or like $800, something like that. Something where it felt pretty fair to both of us, where I was like, sick, I get a whole bunch of money, and you get a fun car to fix up that you can flip, and I am all for that. If you can do something with this, then I'd much rather that than just bringing it to the junk heap or whatever. But also, I haven't had a car in a very long time, so that's been its own thing. So that was pretty much the trade-off there. Which has been fine, honestly. I think, like, also I've kind of lucked out that since then I've been living in a very, like, the fabled livable walking area, where it is very easy for me to just either walk or take the bus pretty much everywhere that matters to me in my life right now. For the most part. It's not like it's not still annoying to not have a car sometimes, but I'm making it work, and I think having the computer has made me a lot happier than having a car would have right now. Especially during lockdowns. Again, the timing on that couldn't have been better.